Welcome back. Well, the House passed the long-stalled $70 billion-plus reconciliation bill to fund ICE and Border Patrol in a party line vote yesterday. The bill funds those agencies now through 2029. It heads to the president's desk for signage. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told me in Washington why Republicans were forced to use reconciliation rather than the traditional appropriations process to fund border security. Watch.
It's unfortunate, Maria, we have to do it that way, but that is what the Democrats have forced us to do. They are not going to fund. They have adopted this open borders, defund police, mantra that has become part of their, it's a signature issue and it's an article of faith if you're a Democrat in the country these days.
So this is all politics.
Well, it is on their side, totally. I mean, I think, this was, all these things were agreed upon. The funding for ICE and CBP, there was a bipartisan agreement to do those things. Minneapolis happened. They withdrew. Then they wanted more concessions. The administration sat down with them, offered up a robust package of reforms. They rejected it, and those agencies were shut down for 50, 60 days, something like that. And so we really had no choice but to use reconciliation. I don't like doing that. That's not the way to fund agencies like this. There's a normal appropriations process that ought to be used for it, but that's what the Democrats left us with. And they seem to be happy with proceeding into an election with this campaign position of we are anti-law enforcement, we are defund the police, we are open borders, we are pro-sanctuary cities. I think that's a losing issue for them, but they don't seem to see it that way.
Well, look, you've got rules around reconciliation that it has to show spending decreases, right? I mean, there are certain budgetary issues around it. Now, the president is calling on you to immediately fire the Senate parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, to clear the way for passage of the Save America Act. Let me get your take on this. I mean, the president wrote on Truth Social, we have every right to change her and should do so immediately. As long as she's there, we will never get our desperately needed Save America Act approved and put into full force and effect. Is that true, Senator? I mean, America, this is an 80-20 issue, right? People want to be able to have rules in place that you show ID, that you have proof of citizenship to vote. How come we can't get this across the finish line?
Well, because we don't have the votes. And for me, it's a function of math. And we are, and it's a popular issue with the American public, but the Democrats in the Senate have block voted against many of the things you just mentioned, and we have put those votes on the floor. The issue with respect to the parliamentarian is one where, even under reconciliation, it has to be principally about budget and not policy. And Save America would not be at a 51 vote threshold. It would be at a 60 vote threshold under the rules, and so she would just basically enforce the rules. Now, on the other side of that, she did rule in our favor last week because there was a weaponization amendment that would have passed at 51 that ended up, under her interpretation, it was a 60 vote threshold, and so we were able to defeat it. But had it been at 51, there would have been a anti-weaponization, or I should say an anti-weaponization amendment attached to that bill, which would have jeopardized its passage in the House and probably jeopardized the president signing into law. So you win some, you lose some with a parliamentarian, and obviously that is one issue during reconciliation that the president is focused on.
Yeah.
The other issue that he talks a lot about is nuking the legislative filibuster, which we don't have the votes to do. And on that issue, it's not even close. I mean, some of these issues, it's a close call, but there probably aren't half of Senate Republicans who are in favor of doing that.
So you don't think then that Elizabeth McDonough is all about politics? Like, the president said that Obama appointed her, and this is politics. You don't think that you think she's being fair?
Well, I think during the Democrat reconciliation bill, before we got the majority, the last one that they did, she ruled against them on minimum wage. They wanted a minimum wage. She ruled against them on a carbon tax. She ruled against them on DACA legalization. There were a whole bunch of things that the Democrats had on their agenda that they tried to get done that she ruled against them on. So at that time, they were calling for her resignation or her firing. It's a hard job. It's a very specific skill set, and but reconciliation has specific rules around it. And I think you do have to have somebody that is hopefully a fair arbiter, a fair referee of these disputes that come up about whether something is at 50 or 60 votes. But again, Save America Act would have been a 60-vote threshold.
Is there anything more you could be doing to stop the Democrats from upending President Trump's agenda? I mean, when you look at just 2 weeks ago when you all left and you had a June 1st deadline to deliver that to the president's desk, the reconciliation on immigration, and you didn't. Was that because of the anti-weaponization fund? Was it because of the ballroom? Was it because the president supported Ken Paxton? What was it?
Well, I think it was probably at that point a combination of all the above. But I do think the announcement of the weaponization fund, timing-wise, was very detrimental to consideration of the reconciliation bill. There were, as you probably heard, we had a very raucous meeting with Todd Blanche in which he came in and answered questions, but there were a ton of Republican senators who were prepared at that point to vote for amendments on the floor on that issue. And we felt like rather than proceed and lose on the floor, we wanted to do our work and ensure that when we brought it to the floor that we could prevail on a lot of these amendment votes. And ultimately we did. But I guess I would say that, you have to, the calculation I have to make and our team has to make is, do we have 50 votes? Can we win? And it's a function of math. And obviously the president wants things done, some of which, we've tried to do through reconciliation, some of which have to get done through regular order. And when you have to go through regular order, it's a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. And as I said, there aren't anywhere close to the requisite number of votes to change that, notwithstanding the president and others out there who are clamoring for that. It's just not going to happen. So we've got to deal in the real world, and if we had put that bill on the floor before that break, we would have lost.
Yeah. You had a conversation and talked with President Trump about the Texas primary race. You wanted him to support John Cornyn. He ended up supporting Ken Paxton. Will you get behind Ken Paxton and support him?
Absolutely. I mean, I met with him last week. We've been in touch, obviously, working with his campaign. We have to keep Texas red. It is essential to protecting and preserving our majority in the United States Senate. If we lose Texas, we're in big trouble. So, obviously, John Cornyn is somebody that's admired and respected in our conference. And yes, I made my arguments to the president on his behalf. He's, in my view, a very effective conservative senator for the state of Texas, but now we've got to get behind Ken Paxton.
It seems like the Democrats will just use any excuse to stop the president. Now it's Bill Pulte. They don't, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries said over the weekend he will not support the extension of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That expires this week, FISA, unless the president withdraws his nomination for Bill Pulte. And you say?
Well, that's an irresponsible position on behalf of the Democrats. Another irresponsible position. And it goes along with open borders, defund the police, sanctuary cities. Now we're going to defund the intelligence gathering capability that has been responsible for 90% of the drug busts that we've had, and has prevented terrorist attacks. It is a tool. It's a national security tool. It needs to be reauthorized. The Democrats have indicated, we moved to proceed to it last week. They block voted against it. We've got to take care of the business of national security. If we don't get that right, the rest is conversation. And the Democrats right now are dug in over this Pulte issue, and it's an irresponsible position to take.
Why are they so dug in, Senator?
Well, I mean, I think they view him as part of, quote, weaponization at the housing agencies, and are at least fearful, or they're saying that this is, they think he'll do this in the intelligence world. These things are totally unrelated. Reauthorizing, if you're worried about the management of the DNI, what you want is guardrails around whoever is in there. This bill does that. This is a bipartisan bill. It was negotiated between, and bicameral, between the House, Senate, Democrats, and Republicans, with significant reforms in it, and it needs to get passed. It doesn't matter who's running DNI. This is legislation you want in place. Yeah. So it is it's a bogus argument, and this is the problem we have with Democrats. Their Trump derangement syndrome, the blind hatred they have of the president, is preventing them from doing anything, even if it's something that is in the national security interest of the country. And so we've seen that over and over and over again. But I think that's what they're going to run on, Maria. I really believe that that's part of their political base in this country now. Does not believe in funding borders, does not believe in funding ICE. And right now, it appears, doesn't believe in funding the intelligence agency.
I understand that, but I feel like they are always the loudest in the room. I mean, this whole idea of the Democrats bringing up weaponization, to me, as an observer from the outside, is so rich because I watched what took place in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and that is trying to take down a sitting president. I mean, spying on him while he's a president, creating this Russia collusion narrative, and then pushing it through the CIA and the FBI. The whole country was ripped apart. How come I don't hear Republicans complaining about that kind of weaponization more often?
Well, and when we do, it doesn't get picked up, obviously, as much. It's partly what the media decides to cover. The Democrats are, obviously, they're vocal. The minority party has the luxury of being able to throw grenades and throw bombs. And, obviously, we have the responsibility of trying to govern and work with the president to get things done. And in the Senate, at least, on most issues, that requires some bipartisan cooperation. But, if there are things that we can do through reconciliation, and we did last summer, as you know, we did over 100 bills were included in that big package, things that we've been trying to do literally for decades. And all the time I've been here, it's the most consequential piece of legislation we've ever passed. And we did it because we kept our team together. It's getting harder to keep our team together. And if we can't win on the floor, if we're going to lose and jeopardize the president's agenda, we'll look for an alternative plan, a way to achieve that objective in a different way. But there isn't anything about this right now that is easy. Everything is harder than it should be because of Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, I mean, why is it so hard? I mean, the president is putting America first. Do your colleagues, are they uncomfortable with that?
Well, I think that part of it is, again, you have several people who are not running for re-election, and some of whom lost primaries against opponents that the president endorsed.
So they're mad at him.
There's a certain amount of it. I mean, and you can't get around it. It is what it is. I just have to figure out how to manage it and how to get votes to get things across the finish line. And last week, that thing went on for 18 hours until 5:30 in the morning on Friday morning, because it was a huge.
You mean the vote-a-rama?
The vote-a-rama, because it was a huge fight to ensure that we could protect the base legislation, keep corrosive poison pill amendments from being added, and we had a lot of Republicans who wanted to vote for those. So it was a Herculean task to do that, but ultimately we succeeded. But that's going to be true now on pretty much everything we do between now and the election, because we have a lot of people who are leaving, and it's just a more challenging environment. It's a political environment. You get no cooperation from Democrats, which means you have to have every Republican. And just like on the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, for me, it always comes down to it's a function of, do we have the votes? And as much as I would love to be able to get that across the finish line in the Senate without nuking the filibuster, we're not going to be able to do it because no Democrat's going to vote for it.
Are you going to be able to codify some of the president's executive orders? He's done so many executive orders. I mean, even when I speak with CEOs on permitting,
right.
I mean, they want to see this permitting situation extend beyond President Trump's term.
Right.
And if you don't codify those, then we're just going to see those executive orders reversed, aren't we?
Well, and I think that's the challenge you have in any administration that comes in, and undoing a lot of the damage that Biden did, and we had that. The Trump administration had to do that. But you got a great regulatory environment. As a general rule, there's still things out there that need to be addressed. But the reason I think business is doing well investing, in spite of some of the political and some of the economic headwinds we're facing with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, is because of all the policies we put in place, both legislatively and then also the regulatory environment the administration has created. And so you have incentivized investment, and we want to continue that and continue to look for ways to take that, that capital off the sidelines, get it in play, create those good paying jobs. And I think, one of the things we can do is permitting reform. And honestly, right now, that is something that could be something we could do at 60 votes in the Senate. There are Democrats who are interested in permitting reform for different reasons than Republicans are. But I do think that's one thing on the agenda between now and November. There are a handful of things that could get done at 60 votes in the Senate.